How's it going, Vikings fans? Today on GG Sports Podcast, we are joined by Justin of the Purple Code, as well as Purple and Gold 4 Days, his own podcast, to break down Vikings Giants, first playoff game of the season. We're going to talk about that right after this. All right, boys. Big game Sunday.
Woo-hoo!
Big game Sunday. Let's start out. We'll let our guest talk for a couple seconds. Justin, tell the GG Sports Podcast fans what you do, where they can find you, all that type of stuff.
And
we
even throw in
how you Vikings fan.
Throw in your Viking story too as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first off, we got united by SK and Rick from the Purple Code.
Yep.
I do a show with Mike and Kyla on Mondays. We all know that Dave and Rap do Tuesdays and you guys do Thursdays, which is kind of funny. We were talking a little bit off air, just how everything has come together. And eventually they're like, Justin, you got to stop just randomly showing up to other people's shows and you got to just do your own thing. And, they encourage me. There's like, just talk. Your first two are going to just be horrible. And a year from now, you'll look back at it and you'll just laugh at yourself. And so, I started Purple and Gold for Days, which, I usually simulcast our Monday show. And, I've joined Dave, who's joined with you guys. I occasionally join Rap and I occasionally do stuff with SK. So, Purple and Gold for Days is my channel, but if you don't already subscribe, please do. If you don't already subscribe to Purple Code, please do, as well as Rap and Dave's channels. I'm sure you guys have mentioned them a couple of times. But as far as being a Vikings fan, I grew up in Cottage Grove, which is a suburb of St. Paul. Been a Minnesota sports fan my whole life of all the teams. From 5 years old was, throwing the football around, yelling touchdown Vikings. So I'm 43, so I didn't see any of the Super Bowl losses, but the whole 87, 98, 2000, 2009, 2017, I've seen them all. So I guess I will just say this. Once you're hooked, you're hooked. When you bleed purple, you have to expect well, we all know what to expect.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, for me, just getting into this, like I said, I finally branched out just middle of October into my own channel. And, we've been chatting on the Purple Code group chat for forever. So I'm really happy to be finally doing a show with you guys.
Yeah,
so thanks for having me.
For sure.
Yeah, we appreciate
not a problem.
Yeah, we appreciate you being on here with us.
So go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so yeah, this playoff game.
Huge.
First round of playoffs.
I'm a little nervous. I shouldn't be, because this should be one of those games that we should, if you look at it, we should win this game pretty handily. But
I think so.
Let's be honest, this entire season, I felt that way many times, and not once has it happened, unfortunately, except for this last week against the Bears. But yeah, there's a lot to look out for in this game. Obviously, we had the first matchup that we pulled off on the Greg Joseph game-winning 61-yard field goal, which was huge and one of the most exciting moments of the season, I thought. But it was a game where Daniel Jones looked like a superstar, 30 of 42, 334. One of those games was our defense just kind of, reared its ugly head again and let a quarterback who you shouldn't look like an all-pro look like an all-pro. And we got another matchup with these guys again. And, obviously I was just listening to Kevin O'Connell's press conference from Wednesday today. And he said, he's like, we know this team. We played them a couple weeks ago. We know this team well. So we can kind of scheme a little better against them, but also they're going to be able to do the same thing to us. And that's the truth. So it's, I don't know. And these repeat matchups scare me a little bit as well, but I'm super excited. Obviously I'm excited to see what this team will do in the playoffs, because they always do things that are just unexpected. They always make you sit at the edge of your seat, and it's just good television. And I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Absolutely.
Jamie, how you feeling about it?
Oh man. Man, I'm hoping that this playoffs, because it's playoffs, I hope it just lights another fire on our ass as far as not letting like those 40-point losses happen, like 44 times this year, whatever. I don't know. I just don't want that to happen. And I'm hoping that something switches from us, having to finish the games right at the end every single time, winning by less than 7 points almost every single game. I'm hoping we can go into this game against the Giants team, like you mentioned, is a team that we should absolutely beat. I think if we want to actually have a chance at a Super Bowl, whether, if you want to be realistic or not, or Viking Super Bowl contenders or not, I don't care. I hope we can. And the only way I see that happening is if we have to play different than we did in regular season, and we can't let it to come to the end of the games. So I'm hoping we go in there swinging and we beat this Giants team, hopefully pretty handily, just because that's going to be how we're going to need to play throughout all of playoffs if we want to have any chance at a Super Bowl. And it does start with this team that we should beat. We've already beat them. Even in that game, we let them come back, a game that we were beating them the entire time, let them come back for us to get that game-winning field goal. So I think we should just not let that happen, hopefully. And I don't know. I mean, it's playoffs. You're going to, of course, you have to hope for a Super Bowl. And hopefully we kind of, after week 1, we feel like we have that Super Bowl contender team potentially. What do you think, Justin?
Well, it wasn't just Purple Daily who decided to go with this mantra if we just want to see the Vikings win one Super Bowl before we die. Because, we'd love to see them win multiple Super Bowls. But I think any Vikings fan who's more than 10 years old will say, I don't care. I just want one.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this organization and this franchise is you get seasons like this, once every 8 to 12 years. I mentioned it earlier. I was 8 years old in 87. And that was right after the Twins had won the World Series. So I'm thinking, oh, well, this is just, it happens all the time. Well, we didn't get back to an NFC Championship game until 98. And then we had 2000 and then 2009 to 17. So when you put it all together, it's about 8 to 10 years. This is your time.
Right.
You don't get to say, well, we have a 3-year window where we're going to go to 2 NFC Championship games and 1 Super Bowl and 1 divisional. That's not what this organization is. Okay. So to where you're going with it, no, this has got to be it, because you've got a lot of aging players. We got a lot of bloated contracts. We're going to have to give JJ some money. So this is where to make it. I mean, just what you said earlier. We've bookended the seasons with our 2 biggest rivals with the only 2 wins that we had by double digits. The rest of our wins were by single scores anyway. And I'm pretty sure you guys saw that tweet, but somebody put it out there. The Vikings are either going to win the Super Bowl or they're going to lose their playoff game by 40-some points. And there is no in-between with this team. And it's almost mind-boggling how weird this season is.
It is.
But I've said the same thing starting about week 5. It was right after they beat the Saints in London. I said, this can't possibly be sustainable, this defense, the way it is. And yet somehow, some way, if they don't get blown out, it's been sustainable.
Sure.
So all we got to do is make sure we don't get blown out. And as long as we're close at the end, we got this, right?
And that's a good segue into our first key matchup to look out for. And that's obviously, 2 first-time head coaches, first time in the playoffs, going against each other. But, I mean, I think every Vikings fan has talked about this a lot this season, just, with the change and the way the games have been. Last season, everyone was talking about all the 1-score games we had. And if we could have flipped half of those, we'd have been a playoff team, right? If we could have flipped 2 of them, we'd have been a playoff team. And I think a lot of people have attributed the coming out victorious in those close games because of the head coach, the way he coaches, the attitude he's brought to this team. It's a new face, kind of an uplifting thing. He brings somebody in. It's exciting. And I think a lot of that is attributed to Kevin O'Connell. Now, sure, he has a lot of room to grow as a play caller in my mind. I think he needs to learn the right way to call offense. Obviously, he's still raw at it. I think some people do forget about that he doesn't have a ton of experience doing it. But just the attitude he's brought to this team is, I think, what brought an 11-0 1-score victory game record to this team and what's got them into the playoffs. And I was listening to Kirk Cousins' press conference, and he said kind of the same deal. He's like, it's not fun being in these single score games. Like you don't want to do that. But when you get to the playoffs, like that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a lot of those games. So he said it's best to be tested like that, but obviously you can't go into it expecting, that we can keep playing the way we have and come out in these games, because everybody's going to be, kind of has that heightened sense of what they need to do. So I don't know. I just
only play with fire so much before you just get obliterated.
Exactly. So, but I don't know, but just playoffs are a completely different atmosphere. And that's, that's kind of the thing. It's like regular season's done and now everybody's on the same, everybody's 0-0 again. And it's a completely different beast. And I do think, though, that the being battle tested is going to help, because as we've seen, a lot of playoff games do come down to, who has the ball in their hands at the end of the game to go win it. So, and I think this team is showing in those situations, if you keep it close going into the fourth quarter, this team can do it.
Yeah.
And
like you can be down pretty much, at least 33 points for sure. For sure, at least 33 points, and we still have a chance to win. I don't think, even though there's teams in there, I know that's probably like, I hope we play the Vikings. in the second round because we're making past the first round.
Right.
I'm sure, but none of them can be completely confident at any point in that game that they're out of the woods. We can come back and win almost at any point, which is nice to know. Though there is that chance, that 40-point bomb that we can get destroyed on too. So hopefully we don't see any of those. But it is going to be a really not crazy good matchup against. In my opinion, I would probably put Kevin O'Connell and DeBall as the two front runners for Coach of the Year. Kevin O'Connell, in my opinion, for sure. He has a better record, but these are two really good first-year head coaches, and I think it's going to be another good battle, and not just because they're both first-year head coaches, but they've already played each other just a few weeks ago, and they got to see how each other coach. So I think that's something that is worth monitoring going into this game is if how they approached it last time, how they might approach it this time, since they know each other's coaching styles and all that stuff. So I think that's something to look forward to as well.
And Dayball, like you said, a lot of credit goes to him as well. Because you look at this Giants team. People thought, come in, win 6 games, cool, give you show you enough to think, Danny Dimes ain't our guy. We'll let him walk. Saquon Barkley, we'll let him walk. We'll start fresh, have a good draft class, get a decent pick, and just see some growth under new head coach. And Dayball came in, got him 10 wins?
Yes.
Got him into the playoffs. Now they're probably going to extend Daniel Jones, probably going to try to find a way to keep Saquon Barkley. So, like you said, Jamie, I think these two guys should be at the front of the list for Coach of the Year. Now I've seen a lot of top 5s with Kevin O'Connell not even on there, and Dayball,
which is ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
Exactly. I 100% agree. Especially since there were those conversations from last year of, well, the Vikings had all these 1-score losses. How is a new coach going to change that? Yes, it did. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think that's ridiculous that Kevin O'Connell isn't up there, but it's just an exciting matchup. We're seeing the future of NFL coaches here, and I think that's really cool.
I mean, if I'm trying to be objective and not letting the purple rose-colored glasses on, and if I had to take out my biases, I would probably, and this is no knock on O'Connell, but I'd probably give a slight edge to Dable because I do think the Vikings have more talent on their roster and have a little bit more to work with. Now, that's kind of like saying, well, Phil Jackson wasn't that great a head coach because he had Jordan and Pippen and Kobe and Shaq. Okay, there were plenty of other coaches that had those two guys in 2 separate spots that didn't win any championships with them. But having said all that, I would probably go Dable just a little bit because that team is playing further above their actual talent. The Vikings are playing above their talent level too, especially on defense. But I think the Giants, I would just give a slight edge to. And again, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, but I'd probably lean Dable just because I don't want my objectivity to be questioned.
Yeah, that's a very good. That's a very good point. There's no question that DeBall, what he's done with the amount of talent they have, like nobody was predicting the Giants to make the playoffs because of their talent. I think, especially as Viking fans going into this season, it was all about the head coach. It's like we feel like we have all the talent, especially on offense, to make a playoff push, go to playoffs, make a playoff push. But at the end of the day, that's the thing. Is I think when you're in playoffs, man, I think we're going to be relying more on talent and not just coaching. And that's another reason why I think the Vikings win this game is I just don't think the Giants have that talent to beat a team like us and other playoff teams, mostly us. But
but the last thing that I will say about Kevin O'Connell before we kind of move on here is just if you want to talk about what Dayball did with Daniel Jones, I kind of want to talk about with what O'Connell did with Kirk Cousins. Now there might be a certain fans or a certain fan on Twitter who likes the quarterback more than he likes the team, who may be down on Kevin O'Connell because he didn't let Kirk his 30 touchdowns, whatever.
Preposterous.
And he may say that Kevin O'Connell empowering or helping Kirk Cousins is a lie because Kirk Cousins is already good, yada, yada. We don't really care about any of that. But I will say that he definitely did empower Kirk Cousins to make changes at the line of scrimmage, to be a leader on the team, not have to be afraid of making mistakes. And we've seen Kirk throw a lot of interceptions, and a couple of them have not been very good throws. But he doesn't, he goes out there and he just moves on to the next play. And he doesn't need to worry about getting to the sidelines and getting the stink eye from his coach and his coach not talking to him for a week. So I just think what Kevin O'Connell has done with Kirk Cousins to put him in a situation where I think a lot of Vikings fans feel much more comfortable with him at quarterback is huge. And I think that's another thing that why this team is so good in 1-score games is Kirk is just unlocking that clutch gene that he has shown in years past, but now it's really coming to fruition.
We just need to hopefully it just keeps rolling into playoffs.
Right. No, and that is one thing that I will say about Kirk as well. And I was watching Kyle Brandt on Good Morning Football talk about it, how like if he wins this game, it's going to be whatever, you're supposed to win that game. But if he loses, look out, the pitchforks are coming out, And with Kirk Cousins, like the bar always keeps raising. He's got to do good in the playoffs. If he plays well against the Giants and wins, like, okay, cool, whatever. Now you got to go into San Francisco or wherever and beat them. Oh, you did that? Okay, cool. I guess that's fine. Now you got to, so that type of deal. And it just never ends until
it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out. Hopefully it ends up in the Super Bowl and everyone loves them. But
I hear what you're saying about moving the goalposts, but there's certain instances about the Kirk Cousins narratives that are completely overblown, but there are certain instances where there is some truth to what is being said about him. Not to pimp my own channel, Purple and Gold for Days, but I did a video. It was just like 7 minutes where I was comparing last year's Kirk versus this year's Kirk. And this was about, I think, 6 or 7 games into the season. So we didn't have all of the data that we have now. But at that point, we were all talking about, oh, wow, Kirk Cousins' stats are all down and all this, whatever. Now, by the end of the year, it's pretty close to what it was. But at the time, it was not. And I said, I will take this version of Kirk Cousins with less stats and more clutch 11 times out of 10.
Yeah,
and
easily.
So absolutely, Kevin O'Connell deserves praise for even if it was nothing more than just getting out of his way. Now we know it was more than that, but Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins were never going to work. They were never going to work. That was a forced marriage by Rick Spielman and maybe the Wilfs a little bit too. But I remember that Chicago game. We came out, we scored touchdowns on our first 3 drives. We were looking like, okay, we're finally going to put this all together. Okay, and then we didn't score until the fourth quarter because we always go take a nap for a quarter and a half. And, the defense was letting some points here, there, whatever. But I remember the interception that he threw when he tried to force it to Adam Thielen, I believe. Now, the defense held him to a field goal. But previous versions of Kirk would have been like, what I'm saying? And he came right back out there and led them on a 7-minute game-winning touchdown drive prior to the Amir Smith-Marset fumble. But that is something he would not have done last year. Take the San Francisco game where we were kind of going back and forth, and then he throws ostensibly a pick 6. Yeah, I was tackled at the 1, but it's basically a pick 6. He was mind bleeped for about 3 weeks after that.
Dude,
this year's version of Kirk was like, whatever, let's move on. And that's the biggest credit I will give to Kevin O'Connell is maybe Kirk has always had the talent, but he hasn't always had the mindset. And I'm sorry to anybody that's a Kirk stan, whether you're the ultra Kirk stan or somewhere, at a reasonable level of stanness. He hasn't always done that. Maybe he did always have it within him. We'll never know. But no, this year's version of Kirk Cousins is massively different than the 4 years he's been here prior and what he was in Washington. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What you mentioned about the San Francisco game is a really good point because we made a video last year about how his stats and everything did drop, and it was actually, and I didn't really think about it at the time, but it was literally right after that San Francisco game. And that's why it was like, it's to this day, I love Kirk Cousins this year and what we've seen of him, but I'm not like on 100%, like, all right, Kirk Cousins is absolutely the guy. I feel like I do need to see something in playoffs to see it, but it's because of those instances that you brought up with the San Francisco game, that throws me off a little bit. I don't have all my trust in that idea yet, but hopefully we see that the same Kirk Cousins we've seen all year going into playoffs. Because you mentioned the what game did you mention this year? The
Chicago Bears game at home. Yeah.
And then the Colts game again. Like he threw that interception. Obviously, we're trying to make a massive comeback. Right. And he threw that interception that wasn't really his fault. It was towards Rager. Yep. But that's a big interception. We need to come back. We need like 20 more points or whatever. And he still marched back and brought us a victory. And that's just so much different than what we've seen from Kirk Cousins for his entire time in Minnesota up until this year. So yeah, man, hopefully we keep seeing that in playoffs. That's what I will need to see to some extent. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy to, kind of be like, all right, I think Kirk kind of did turn a corner in those areas.
For sure. So moving on to the next matchup to look out for here, and that's our defense trying to stop the Giants' running game. Last game held Barkley at 84 yards. He had that 27-yard touchdown,
which is pretty solid.
It was that led to the game-winning drive kind of at the end of that game. But that is the key to stopping this offense, is stopping Saquon Barkley. Daniel Jones, when he's got time back there, because we're worried about the running game, and Daniel Jones as well, man. Like I'll talk about him in a second here, but it's but stopping Saquon Barkley is the key to stopping this offense. If you let him get going, then Daniel Jones has all the time in the world on play action and everything like that. So, and Daniel Jones this year has stepped up huge in the last, like as we mentioned before, last game against us, 334 yards. He only had the one touchdown, but yeah, man, Saquon Barkley is hard to stop, especially this year. Huge bounce back year for him after, a couple injury riddled seasons, the last couple. But what he's done for this offense, he's a huge reason why this team is as good as they are this year. So, and he's hard. He's tough to stop. But I mean, you definitely noticed a huge bump in the run defense since Delvin Tomlinson's came back. So this matchup really intrigues me, as it did in the first game.
Yeah, for my money, when healthy, Saquon Barkley's the best running back in the league. We all love Devin Cook. Aaron Jones, again, is right up there. But, again, Saquon's biggest knock is, your best, ability is availability. But if healthy, he's the best back in the league for me.
Yeah, I think, this year he's bounced back. I'm not sure. I don't know if I'd put him number one right now. Before what was it, a knee injury that happened to him? Was it ACL?
I believe so.
When I watched him his rookie year, it was probably the best running back talent I've ever seen. So I do think he has that potential, and he's obviously bounced back this year. So he might be that guy again. But yeah, I mean, that Giants offense runs straight through Saquon Barkley, and they have probably the worst wide receiver talent in the NFL right now, especially anything that's good. Anyone that's good, like Shepard, I think would be considered probably their best when he is healthy. But they also have a really hard time staying healthy on that wide receiver court. So I don't know. You just got to stop Saquon Barkley, and I think that is like the key to holding that offense, even though we still somehow allowed Daniel Jones 30 completions for 300 something yards. But
yeah, that is the biggest thing though, because if you can stop Saquon Barkley, you can make them one dimensional. Danielle Hunter has been fantastic in the latter part of the season. Let him pin his ears back and get that pass rush going. But the thing with Daniel Jones, Jamie, I'm eating my words on this last one, is Daniel Jones is a fantastic runner of the football. So that's really the one thing with him. And you look at him, it's like the guy looks like a he's a future math teacher or something. But he's one of those guys that if you lose your contain, he'll hurt you with his legs. Exactly. Or if you leave a spot in the middle for him to run through, he'll beat you with that. And so that's really the biggest thing. But you can force him into making mistakes. If you get him rattled, just like a lot of quarterbacks in the league. And like you said, with the receiver talent that he doesn't really have on that team, it's because I believe they said Kenny Golladay was only like 74 catches short of getting his incentive for catches for the season or something like that. And this is only 74. They don't have anything at receiver. Like they got Slayton, who's solid. That Hodgins had a huge game against us last time.
Right,
8 catches, 89 for a touchdown, but. Yeah, man, Daniel Jones, you can force him to make mistakes if you get pressure and keep him in the pocket. So I think that's so stopping Saquon and Daniel Jones is just the key to this game. I mean, it sounds, whatever. It'll stop the running back and quarterback. Wow, you sound like a scholar here.
Yeah, I know. But
you're really going out on a limb there, Casey.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
it really is the key.
Yeah, they slack so hard in the wide receiver department, and obviously Saquon's their best player. So it doesn't take a genius to realize how to control this offense. Even if, we're just some guys on the podcast talking about it. So I'm sure Kevin O'Connell will realize what he has to do there, which he kind of showed. He was able to stop Saquon last time, and we did let it come down to Daniel Jones' arm, which, kind of did work until the end of the game there. But Scott,
not to go. I'm a Madden player on super easy mode, but just run blitz every single play.
Yeah, dude,
leave one person to spy on Daniel Jones, and if he completes passes, he completes passes. We got Duke Shelley, we got Patrick Peterson. Generally speaking, even if they give up receptions, they generally don't miss tackles. But having said that, particularly Duke Shelley, I mean, that guy's just been a godsend, so to speak. But you know what? Yeah, Shannon Sullivan last game was pretty bad. Okay, but part of the reason he probably was is they were targeting him. They were staying away from Peterson, staying away from Duke Shelley. I'll say it like this. For me, it's just as simple as this. put all your eggs into stopping Saquon Barkley. Make sure
Right.
you contain your rush lanes when you're going after Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
This is his first playoff game on the road at US Bank Stadium.
Right.
I don't care if you give up 250, 350 yards if you're shutting down Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Because he's not going to be able to. What's sustainable? I think that seems to be the theme here tonight is what is sustainable. I will take my chances all day, every day with take away Saquon Barkley from Daniel Jones. Zadarius Smith set out last week, some of it personal issues, some of it, you don't need to play. And, we just need you back at full tank. So shut down Saquon Barkley and let Zadarius and Daniil go after him. That's really all you have to do.
Yeah.
Sure. And then
100%.
Something that's going to add to the defense is earlier this week, the center for the Giants, Nick Gates, called out the Vikings fans saying that it wasn't nearly as loud as I thought it was going to be.
Ooh,
They're
I didn't hear that.
They're too nice over there. It's like, it just wasn't. Which he didn't realize that there were some empty seats because there was a snowstorm and some people couldn't make it to the game.
Right.
But this is the type of stuff you just do not say. Like, if you want to say something about, saying something about the players kind of cheap, but if you want to, take shots at the other team, fine. But when you're going into a hostile environment like US Bank Stadium can be, you don't mess with the fan base, especially not Vikings fans. We're pretty damn passionate. We've seen a lot of shit,
Especially
So saying that, I hope everybody that ends up at this game on Sunday goes hard. Every time they're on the field, don't stop yelling, hitting whatever you need to make any sort of noise. Like this, Nick Gates, you brought whatever comes on Sunday on yourself, man. Like don't say stupid stuff like that, and it's going to come back to bite him.
Every time he gets a false start. Okay, you got to do the Bronx cheer. I'll say just to reiterate a point there. Yes, there was a snowstorm. It was a Saturday game. It was Christmas Eve. Okay. And I will attest to this. I was actually at the Colts game the week before that, which was also a Saturday. And it was a late arriving crowd then too. So there is just something to be said where, okay, it's Saturday at odd times, a holiday here and there. Yeah. You know what? Might not be at full force. We're going to be at full force come 3:20 on Sunday. We'll just say it like that.
Playoffs.
Why poke the bear? Why?
Yeah.
Why? I don't get it.
Especially when they lost that game. So, I mean, imagine a full stadium.
Yeah.
You can't even
everybody else, we want to see those guys again. Because if we played a clean game, it'd be a different story. It's like if we played a clean game, you wouldn't have even been in that game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just some of these things that some of these teams say is just kind of whatever. And like all you hear from this side is from the Viking side, hey, we're playing against a good football team. Like it's we got to be on point. And that's one of those things. I think Kevin O'Connell's good about not giving anybody any sort of extra motivation. And I love it.
I mean, if you're the starting center where you're going to be playing every offensive play and touching the ball on every touch, why would you? Okay, it's one thing when Jalen Reagor makes a comment like that. It's like, dude, you're the fourth wide receiver. So who cares what you say? You're the starting center. You're going to be out there. I don't get it. I was always taught, you know what? Let your play and do the talking. But some people just can't help themselves. So
Delvin Tomlinson. That's a good point about Delvin Tomlinson up right now against that guy. So
for sure. But and of course we can't look forward to a Minnesota Vikings playoff game without talking about the best player on the team, and that being Justin Jefferson. Obviously, we all know 1,806 yards. Didn't quite get any of the records because of the quiet game against Green Bay, but like we're talking about the best receiver in football here. First playoff game. And he doesn't strike me as the type where the lights are going to be too bright for him. No. He strikes me as the type that's going to come out just ready to go. I mean, obviously saying the lights are too bright is stupid considering he won a national championship game and one of the most prolific offenses in college football. But man, I'm excited to see what he's going to do in his first playoff game.
For sure.
I'm super pumped. I can't wait.
Especially against another a Giants defense whose coverage has not been very good all season long.
But their defensive line is back to full strength in the
That's the key.
Right.
So that'll be,
and we'll have to get in. If I was to make we have 3 key matchups. If I was going to make a fourth one, it would, and I probably should have put it in here anyways, but I felt like I had to put JJ in here, and it would probably be our interior line against their defensive line, right? I think that is going to probably be the biggest, other than potentially Saquon. But honestly, I think this Achilles heels for us in this game is going to be that matchup against their defensive line. Because, I mean, I think even though Kirk Cousins had a fantastic game against them, he was getting a lot of pressure. And Yeah, man. I don't know. But
obviously we know the second. I mean, Adoree Jackson didn't play in the first game. I don't know. It sounded like he might be ready to go by Sunday, but in the last game we had Justin Jefferson, 12 catches, 133 yards and a touchdown. Hawkinson was huge, 13 catches, 109, two touchdowns. Right. So like this, we lit up the secondary last time, and we can definitely do it. We can definitely do it again, especially, KJ Osborne's kind of come onto the scene a little bit more as well. So man, I think that this is gonna be such a fun football game to watch, man. I'm pumped. I'm ready for it. I'm super excited. Hopefully, got to get a little bit more going in the run game. I have been a pretty harsh Delvin Cook critic for the last couple of years, mainly because the injuries and the money. But what do you do? Jamie, you can attest to that. I'm pretty harsh on him, but we got to find a way to get that running game going just to make things easier on Kirk, especially since that pass rush is, for the Giants is dangerous. And you really, like, 3/5 of the offensive line is a huge question mark. Center, we don't know what's going to happen. I know recording this on Wednesday, Kevin O'Connell said that Bradbury's going to start practicing. They don't know if he'll play. Obviously, Ingram has had an up and down season. You notice a lot more of the downs than the ups. And then right tackle is kind of up in the air too with Udo or Blake Brandel, depending on how Brandel's week goes at practice. But I would guess they probably just go with Udo since he's gotten the reps the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And if he really struggles, maybe then mix Brandel in there a little bit. But man, center to right, you got a lot of concerns there. And I'm sure, the Giants are looking at that, licking their chops. They have to be.
Probably. I mean, Oli Udo, let's start with him. He's been okay as a right tackle. Now, maybe we're grading him on such a low curve with how awful he was as a guard. Right. So maybe his performance – now, mind you, again, he's playing the Bears last week, so we can't take too much out of that. But I will say that even when he came in Green Bay, okay, he looks like a competent backup tackle. So is he going to be Brian O'Neill? No, of course not. But I think that we have found enough to say, okay, because mind you, in the first game, Kirk Cousins was sacked, 4 times? And I think he was hit 11 times.
Yeah.
Now, the Giants are known to be that blitz-happy team. I think they blitz on like 40-some% of dropbacks, which, sometimes they got home, and sometimes Cousins burned them. I mean, that game-winning field goal drive was 3rd and 9. They brought the kitchen sink. Cousins stood in there, did a little backpedaling, and he finally did something that he wouldn't do last year. Speaking of that, is sometimes Kirk waits for his wide receiver to clear before he throws it. Well, he know he can't wait that time. So he actually anticipated and said, all right, I'm just going to put the ball where I think Justin Jefferson is going to be.
Right.
And it hit him spot on. So, yes, the biggest key offensively is the offensive line, because as we've seen, the easiest way to shut down Justin Jefferson is to not let him catch the ball, because Kirk Cousins can't get it to him. So we can talk about those secondary players all we want and what JJ did in the first game. We had Brian O'Neill in the first game. So I think what the key to this is remember how we adjusted after that Dallas game of saying, all right, we're going to have to leave some tight ends in here. We can't run 3 or 4 guys out every single play. They're going to have to continue with that mindset of, okay, yeah, Oli looked okay. We got to make sure we got a back over here or a tight end over here or something, because you can't just play straight up 5 on those 4. Otherwise, Kirk will get clobbered.
Yeah, we got to do something about that. And you were mentioning how the difference with Kirk Cousins this year is that he's kind of, I guess, a little bit more trust in, well, at least Justin Jefferson, where he's willing to get that ball up without him clearing. And now I think we can start saying that about TJ Hawkinson, especially in that game. And that's what's kind of nice about the addition of TJ Hawkinson, as it's obvious Kirk has the trust in him. Even when TJ doesn't always come down with the ball as much as we'd like him to, Kirk still goes after him. And you can see that same kind of trust that he sees in JJ with TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah. I think Kevin O'Connell said there's 5 players on the team with at least 60 receptions this year. So that's another thing with Kirk. I mean, and he's always been pretty decent at spreading the ball around, but this year you're really noticing, and that's just what helped this offense flourish, and hopefully it helps this offense flourish into a wild card weekend win at home. So with that, let's jump into some score predictions here. Justin, let's start us off. What are you thinking?
I think the entire world is going to think that this is going to be a close game. Vikings 11-0, so that by definition means they were in 11 close games. I believe the Giants were probably the 2nd or 3rd in the NFL with close 1-score wins as well. I believe they had like 8 or something like that.
That sounds right.
So Well, let's see. What happens when you have two high-flying offenses and the over-under is 60? Well, everybody bets the over, and next thing you know, it's a 24-21 game because somehow, some way, it never goes the way you think it does. Everybody in the world is saying that this is going to be a close game. And I said it on Monday, and I'm not going to be the guy that says one thing on one show and another thing on another show so I can say, hey, I was right on that one. I think this is – I'm going to speak it into existence. I'm going to speak it into this is the game. Even though I've said it probably 12 weeks in a row now, this is the game the Vikings are going to put it all together. I'm sorry. There is no reason that this team has gotten to where it is, 13 wins. And I'm not saying the Giants are garbage. They're a young, up-and-coming team with a very good head coach that has coached them well. But I believe the Vikings are either the fewest penalized team or bottom 5 anyway. And that gets back to O'Connell. Putting in this new culture and not so much like, discipline, but just, hey, we're going to do this. We are going to be good situationally. I said 35-21, and I'm sticking to it. I think the Vikings are finally going to get their 2-possession double-digit win, and we can hope for the Seattle Sea Chickens to beat the 49ers.
I like the way that sounds. Jamie, what are you thinking?
Yeah, man, I 100% agree. I think just for the playoffs, I think, like I've said earlier about having kind of that different mentality, like I'm hoping that we are this team that you go to playoffs and it lights a fire under your asses and you just play better. And I think we have to do that if we want any chance at making it to a Super Bowl or ultimately winning a Super Bowl. So I have to agree with you. I think this is a game that you go in and you don't want it to be close because I don't know where that, like, you don't want it to be close because you want the momentum to go throughout the rest of the playoffs. So I also think it's going to be a more than a double-digit win, and I'm going to say 26-14.
26-14. You guys are getting me excited with all these multi-score wins.
There you go.
I'm going right back to where I told myself
you're going to be the reasonable guy here tonight, Casey.
I'm going 27-21, something like that. It's gonna be tight. It's gonna be a tight one, as they always are. It'll be tied 21-21. Kirk's just gonna moonshot to JJ, get that 6 touchdown, or get that 6 points as the clock expires.
And then it's gonna come down to Greg Joseph point to win the game.
Then they'll just end it. So it'll be the touchdown at the end of regulation. I don't know. I'm just feeling something in the 20s there, a 1-score game in the 20s that we're gonna be biting nails for the entire game. But that's what playoff football is all about. But we want to know your guys' thoughts on this. Let us know down in the comment section your score predictions for this game. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to subscribe to Purple and Gold for days, as well as the Purple Code on YouTube. And we'll see you guys next time on the GG Sports.
Skol Vikings.
Skol Vikes.